Well, so we're ready to do the talk now on AM Talk. And this morning we have Professor A.C. Sutherland Ade in the studio. She's a professor at the Institute of African Studies and a staunch academician, and has written a number of books as well as publications over the years. And Ueno has been a secretary in government, of course, during the days of the PNDC, and so has been somebody who knows a lot about politics also. Doesn't talk about it these days a lot, but we'll see how we can tempt her to do a lot more of the talking on the politics these days. She may not like it, but eventually. Well, so we're here to do the talk now, but please, let's just go back. And we know that the first black president of South Africa passed on, and also we would want to talk about that as well. Professor Ade, thanks for coming to our studios. Not often do we get you to share your own thoughts on subjects of the day. I would say, so far, how has been the university and the academic life?
Well, it's fulfilling, it's fulfilling because you work with people and share ideas and tease out issues, and it's tough because you have to apply yourself, and you have to be committed to bringing out the truth as far as you can judge. But it's just wonderful to see people graduating, and
and you also wonderful. Impacting knowledge to them.
Well,
how long have you been doing all this?
Well, I mean, I went to the University of Ghana in 1982.
That's right.
And even when I was in the ministry, I still taught. So I've been teaching the university since 1982 and doing
over 31 years of active
and doing
service.
Research. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
What are your own thoughts about supposedly the criticisms that currently is leveled at the tertiary institutions of the day about courses not being diversified and still very old and not relevant to the day? I don't know what your own
I don't think it's fair. I mean, when I went into the ministry in 1986. From then, the 90s were a period, there was a period of change, and the universities got to understand that they've got to not depend on government, but go out there and look for money to do, research, to diversify their courses and so on. I don't think anybody can come to the campuses of the universities and say that the universities have been static. They have not. I mean, Legon has oceanography, it has engineering, it has, and many of the institutions are trying to look ahead in terms of the needs of the country and produce the type of people we need and do the research. I think that the problem may be in terms of communicating what they're doing, and also, of course, there's a real problem of enough room for the numbers of students that we want to, I mean, 1 year, everybody has to do African studies.
Definitely.
One of my classes, which I taught with one of my colleagues, but one of my classes was almost 1,000 students. I mean, you can use all the tricks in the trade, but you can't reach individuals. And I think that now what they're trying to do is to cap the classes and say we can't have more than X number of students in a class and so on. But there's a social issue. If you don't take them on, what happens? So it's more of looking for ways of finding access, so that and equipment and so on, so that you can take on more teachers and provide the services. But the universities have not been static, and I mean I fought with them a lot when I was in the ministry. So I have to doff my cap to those who have been leading the universities over the last, say, 15 to 20 years. Yeah.
Do you think that perhaps because there's not a lot of access for those intakes to be made as much as people would want, and so there's a lot more a sharper focus on what the universities are doing, a lot more scrutiny now, and so perhaps that criticism coming along.
Yes, I mean, I will not deny that, when you have a crunch on numbers and therefore a crunch on facilities, you can't be the best institution that you could do. You can't do your best, because it's just an impossible situation. But having said that, it is also true that people are scrambling for places, and therefore obviously they will turn their attention to whatever is going wrong in there. And so yes, I agree with you that it's really, if we had enough, and we won't have enough places for a long time. I think that one of the things we try to do, which I'm really hoping that we can turn our attention to, is to diversify higher education and to give areas like polytechnics and colleges, give people the remuneration that is commensurate with what they have done, so that they don't feel like you have to go into a university like the University of Ghana in order.
You feel.
I mean, it's those who are on the other side.
So the non-correlation in terms of how we tend to rationalize what emoluments are when people come from various institutions, per se, not universities. That is the cause of some of the difficulties in terms of the nuances.
I think so. I think that if we would...
So it's more got to do with the job market?
Also with the job market, absolutely. I think that is an issue.
But don't we naturally, conservatively though, tend to have that very inclination to think that the universities are more of the best institutions that can only tend to nurture the type of people we want for our economy, etc.
No, but
just because of where the history is coming from.
Yeah, the history, fine, but we are going into the future.
So we need to change.
I mean, there is no reason why we should have a situation where all our plumbers on the, or electricians and so on in the oil industry are coming from Nigeria and this country and that country. That tells you what we need. And, we are not preparing for things like that. You want to do data processing. You've got to have people who can do data processing. You don't need a degree to do data processing, and so people get a job, and then we don't have the kind of people we need to plug into that kind of market, So I think that if that's the way we're thinking, then it's backward and we ought to do something about it. Seriously, ought to do something.
For example, in the United States, Germany and Japan, or even in the United Kingdom, your job experience, whether you have an initial diploma or not, qualifies you to do a master's, or sometimes it doesn't happen. For example, in your university, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't. In fact, one of the reasons why University of Education Winneba was established was to free the way so that when you have a diploma, you can go on and get a degree, and your diploma will count for something, in the teaching field. Because we have all these roadblocks. You can't articulate. You don't move from one, level to another. Your job experience doesn't count. It's something that needs to change. It really needs to change.
Where do we need the change starting from?
Well, we have to start it from within the institutions, and we have to start from institutions that give professional degrees. Those who, are trained professionals, teachers, engineers, this kind of thing. So those are the institutions that have to show the way.
Do you think that conventional universities like yours, KNUST, etc., I'm talking about just the pioneering ones. Of course, Legon is the topmost. Perhaps
some people would
argue. But that's true. That's true. Do you think that perhaps the top leadership then need to be a lot more malleable and amenable to change, so that they don't get too conservative with what should be the status quo, but what really is invoked today?
Yeah, I think that we are caught between what we call world-class quality and what we need to do. And
in terms of what the resources...
No, world-class quality in terms of the quality of the paper that we put in your hand. I mean, that when you hold this document, it means this, that, And I think
has that got to do with reputation as well?
Yes, because there are rankings in the world and so on. But I think what we are not realizing is that other people are looking to what they need. I'm in a field
in terms of what the output of the student can be better than,
because I'm in a field where my best scholars they can't read or write. I'm in African literature. The greatest kinds of traditional literature is performed and known by people who can't read and write. So we've been trying to get the university to create a category of scholars, of intellectuals who are acknowledged as traditional intellectuals, and people like Professor Kofi Anyido who have been working on it. But it's a struggle.
It's a struggle. You think it will come in your day?
I hope so. I mean, well, my days are numbered, but
no, but hoping means that it's not in the next decade.
No. I mean, it's moving. It's moving. It's moving. It's moving through the system. Yeah.
One of the things that Professor Aite, who has your university currently, and the various governing councils of the top universities we have in Ghana, IE, KNUST, Cape Coast, etc., has been the talk of a collegiate system. Yes. And we know that when you go to universities outside, that is what has persisted. And so we've had universities affiliated to Oxford or Oxford institutions that have now become colleges. And other universities, etc. How do we go on to that path?
Well, that's moving right along. There've been suggested colleges and how they should work and which departments should be in them and so on. That's moving on. And the understanding is that if you're working with a smaller unit, then you can concentrate more and produce better results. And then have the advantage of being linked to other colleges within the same university, and so have the best of both worlds. That's the whole idea. But we also have affiliate. A lot of universities, university colleges cannot exist unless they are affiliated to one of these, original universities in Ghana. So we have also that, going on, and it's supposed to help set the standards. But people have to put their foot down as far as standards are concerned.
We'll be winding up on the issue of education.
Yeah, because otherwise it will go on forever.
Yes. But I have to ask you, because we don't get you often. Talking about affiliation and the quality and the colleges, etc. These days we have a lot more private institutions now. Of course, the fees are high. All of us would have to go through. But then they get all these affiliations from top universities. How critical is that?
How critical in what sense?
In terms of them getting the affiliation or getting affiliated to.
No, I think that it is critical. I think that one of the ways that universities and such institutions set standards is to have peer review and peer oversight. So your peers will look at your work and say, this work is good, this work is not good. That's how we work. And so, when you get affiliated, people who are more experienced or who are your peers look at your stuff and say, your examinations are poor, you haven't set them right, or whatever it is, and then you use that to build up your institution. And then when you've built it up enough, you go off on your own. So it is critical. It is critical to be affiliated and to work with other, academic institutions to build yourself up. Yes.
And those private universities are also complementing the roles that you're playing in accommodating a lot more people.
Very much so, and also offering,
diverse courses.
Yes, diverse courses.
Or emanating from the original universities.
Not necessarily. Some of them are doing things that we haven't done. If you take an university like Ashesi, for example, they're into, say, design, into critical thinking, and so as courses. This is not how we started. We felt that some of those things were built into what we were doing, but they have isolated it and are teaching.
How is that relevant?
It's very relevant. Critical thinking is something that we absolutely need. If you take anything and read it, you've got to have the background to ask questions about what you are looking at. And or if you go into a negotiation, with the mining company or with the World Bank or whatever,
so that's why you need those expertise.
You need critical thinking. You need to be able to ask questions and to be able to discern the trends. And so critical thinking is crucial.
I have two more questions for you before we wind up on the subject of education.
You keep saying that.
Now, how do we make sure that we have our universities accommodating a lot more people in terms of the admissions? Because now the number is in excess of over 200,000 who don't get admitted at all.
Yes. You see, I have a very different view from many people.
Oh, tell me.
See, my view is that we have to have different modes of offering education.
How?
One mode is face-to-face. The other one is a mixture of face-to-face and distance education. The other one is purely distance education, and so on. Modular things where you do one module, you go back to work, you do another module.
So you don't necessarily have to be in a classroom all the time. And there's no serious interfacing all the time.
Exactly.
But it's learning.
If you don't do that, and also I actually believe that we are our whole attitude works against non-resident students, for example. We cannot accommodate everybody on the campus. I mean, I've always said this, and I've thought that, our transportation, and it goes outside the university, our transportation system, and on the university, places to sit, places to eat, places to use the bathroom, and so on, accommodating reading rooms and all that. So when you come to campus, you can do whatever you need, and then there's transport to go home,
So you don't necessarily have to stay on campus.
We can't do it.
You can't do the models just like the normal
models. In the world has everybody that they are teaching.
You're almost sounding like you're a new person in an old person, a new wine in an old skin. And
I've always said this.
You've always said how come we don't have that idea permeating in those who govern the universities, who take the decisions for the university? It's
not just the universities, it's a whole lot of us. Whether it's from if we had a chance, we'd put primary school children on campus. I mean, we'd keep them in school. Secondary school, we're so fixated on having, that even the pupils themselves, when you set up a community school, they say, I don't want to go to school and come back and pound food. You know what I mean? So it's like
because it's stressful.
No, it's just a stigma. It's a stigma.
Okay.
So why don't we do things to make it attractive to be a day student?
Okay.
And that, I'm afraid, if we don't do that, there's no way that we can make it. There's just no way.
We're praying that we'll get there. But my last question, are you satisfied with the quality that is coming out of the universities, whether your university, the private universities, or the ones coming up currently?
No.
Okay.
No. We have things to do. We have things to do. I as I said before, we need to be able to get our hands on the students and to work with them, because once you do that, you can bring a lot out of them. I feel that we are letting them go. We are having to let. No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
No, that's too much. But I know that we could stimulate them a lot more. Yeah.
You think that's a reflection on the thinking that our society has and the type of human resource we're likely to produce?
Oh yes. I mean, you see, people have to be able to write and think on their feet, be able to record a meeting, that you are having accurately, be able to summarize these newspapers, give me, the gist of this in Pressy and so on, these little things. But it makes a big difference. And I think that those are the skills that, without enough practice, you have to then go out and learn it on the job. And of course, it's irritating to people on the job, Yeah.
I see you're reading Traces of a Life, and I would want a camera to capture. Traces of a Life, collection of elegies and praise poems. Abna P. Buzia, she wrote it.
Yeah.
Why are you reading it?
I'm reading it because Abna Buzia has this collection of poems and statements that includes one about Nelson Mandela.
Okay. You want to share with me, because I wanted to ask you a question on Nelson Mandela as well before we do the transition to the other things we're discussing.
Okay, so she wrote this poem at the time that Nelson Mandela was being released from jail in 1990, and it's called Testament for the First Accused. And so it goes through from the beginning, when he was arrested, what was happening at the time all over the world, all over the black world. So she goes on, and then she takes every decade. So your 50th birthday, your
you can see James Brown in there.
Yes,
J.B. Dankwa.
Yeah. So she kind of writes about what was happening at different
time.
moments for and then his 20th year until his 70th birthday, when he was and thereafter when he was being released. And so she writes on your by the time we reach your 70th birthday, another generation of children had learned to call your name. We carried old images of your face in our hearts and on the t-shirts on our backs as an icon of the new morning. The Tembu warrior prince, the lawyer activist, the prisoner. Around the world we marched in our millions, demanding your return into a troubled world, so sadly bereft of heroes, for you were still alive and you were still not free. I want to read the end. And now it is the Lord's Day, the 11th of February 1990. It is 5 a.m. in Los Angeles, California. It is 8 a.m. in New York and Kingston, Jamaica. It is 1 p.m. in Stockholm, London and Accra, Ghana. And half the marching world has paused to keep vigil. For it is 3 p.m. in Cape Town, South Africa, and we wait to see your face. After 27 years of fighting, marching and singing, we keep a 90-minute watch to see you take those next few steps on this your no easy walk to our uncertain freedom, to witness your release into this changing world, unceasingly the same, for you are still alive, but we are still not free. Amandla Mandela, a luta continua. So
that's a very remarkable writing from Abner Busia.
Yes, it is.
And talking about what's remarkable, how remarkable was Nelson Mandela?
Oh goodness! I mean, people have said so many things, but I think that he was remarkable because he was so human and knew it, and yet had to step into these big shoes, huge expectations. And you hear interviews of him where he was overwhelmed by the expectations, and yet there was something about him that drew him towards trying to fulfill them. And so that for me is remarkable. I mean, and his ability to lead in a without imposing himself, you know, on people. I think it's just amazing, you know, that. And then the fact that the whole world has recognized him, there's something about him, you know, because wherever you go in the world now, people are saying that he's one of the last, you know, real leaders that you can count on, and that is really unbelievable.
I was just and these days, you know, the TV, because he just passed on, the TV stations and the cable channels I watch with his documentaries and his films that have been remade. I was watching one of them, a sports feature, I think, called Invictus.
Yes.
Very beautiful film.
Yes.
And you get to see how remarkable he was, from being somebody whose people wanted vengeance, and he thought he rather needed to accommodate the enemy for them to feel that, well, he was also part of them.
I see. I think that if
to me it doesn't sound right, right?
But if
that's what he did.
If you think beyond the immediate, you can sound very weird to everybody.
Yeah.
Because you can see stuff, you know, in the future that people can't see, and so he sort of got ready. The whole idea that, look, if I'm going to be negotiating with you, I better learn your language, I better learn your literature, I better know how you live, I better be able to talk to you, because I am going to be living with you. It wasn't he wasn't being sort of a nice person. He was being strategic, and it is that kind of strategic thinking that leaders have to have if they have a long-term project, you know, for their people. And so that's what's remarkable, is capacity to stick to the long term when the short term looks far more, you know,
gloomy.
Yes, exactly.
Because I remember when he came out of prison, the first 3-4 years there were fears that South Africa could go into civil war and etc. Because the man has come, so there'll be vengeance.
Well, the problem is, you see, the issue is that I think sometimes we also try and make him look like this nice sort of teddy bear granddaddy kind of person. He was, you know, he was pushed into believing in armed struggle. So the setting up of Mkonto Wesizwe, he was part of it,
Yes.
you know, because at some stage in his life, he just thought, look, I mean, these people, they don't understand unless you use violence and so on and so forth. So, I mean, one of the advantages and also disadvantages of living a long life is that you are permitted to change your mind and your tactics. And so he changed his mind and his tactics over a period of time with the principles in view. So coming out and looking at things that way, he saved his country and in fact saved the whole world in a certain way, gotten us to see an alternative.
What do you think he will best be remembered for?
No, I think I can't say it's
pinpoint.
I can't.
I mean, everything he can be remembered for, right?
Yeah, I can't say it's one thing. I think he'll be remembered for offering us an alternative form of leadership and way of being a human being, showing us another way to be human. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You think the fight against white-dominated rule will ever stop?
It can't. It shouldn't. I mean,
if there's anything like that, imperialism, neo-colonialism,
I think
neo whatever.
We have.
And I know your daddy has been very instrumental in
my
that.
father was sort of a freedom fighter and a civil rights activist.
Oh, are they calling the imperialists or
what?
Anti-imperialists?
No. I mean, I think we would call anti-colonial, civil rights. Yes. And so though people of that generation understood the need to pull together as black people, and work together. And so he worked with Sam Nujoma and Nyerere and Mandela, met Desmond Tutu, that sort of thing, to try and, at the time when apartheid was a problem, and of course Mandela he met after he came up. But the point is that you can't go to sleep, and I think that we in Ghana have become quite complacent about that sort of thing, and we don't have our antennas out there to catch the dangers. So right now Africans are selling, we're giving out our lands, like in Nigeria, huge tracts of land for people from other countries to come and plant fuel or
we call it foreign direct investment. You've had a phrase before, Professor.
No, that's not foreign direct investment. How is it foreign direct investment?
Or you call it foreign takeover?
I mean, I think we should be careful. I mean, you can't, if the person is planting things, taking all of it out, and you are sitting there, you don't have food to eat, you've got to think a little bit, and I think that this, in our time, we've got to take up this struggle on our own terms.
So we're always struggling, you're saying?
We have to, but I don't think we are.
One thing that Nelson Mandela exhibited was patience.
Yes.
We know the current president is telling Ghanaians to be patient. Things can't change overnight.
Yes.
Because on page 3 of the paper, the Crusading Guide, he said that he says the quest for jobs, better housing, economic prosperity, and improved living standard demands patience and sacrifice. And he said Ghanaians and Africans in general do have patience. All we need to be patient these days, once more, is just to make sure that we have the mindset that patience and the changes that we need don't happen overnight.
Yes.
How critical are these to our current state of living? Because people cry for things all day.
Yes.
They may vote for you, and the next day they're demanding a lot.
Well, yes, it's happening in Thailand and all kinds of other countries where they're trying to topple their governments, and get new ones in. I think that while this is a truism, patience thrives on hope also. And if you act in a way that doesn't give your people hope, then they will not be patient. And the hope sometimes lies in them trusting you with their resources, trusting that you're doing the very best that you can. Mm-hmm. And I'm afraid that that's something that the people in government have to earn the trust. The trust has to be earned in little, gestures, genuine gestures, that demonstrate to people that you are moving things along. So it's a tough one, because as you are asking them to be patient, you're also putting the onus on yourself to perform. Now the performance requires you to be able to inspire the people, to go along with you. So it's a two-sided coin.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the days of Mandela, things were different. The enemies they were fighting were different. Now the enemies that current generational leaders and governments in Africa are fighting, including Ghana, are fighting, are different.
Yes.
There's always poverty around. There's always a talk of a health issue, if it's a scale of HIV or whatever it is, a cancer or whatever that's plaguing the health system, the need for housing, etc. How do they go through the state of governance while trying to meet the demands of the citizenry who are always asking for more?
You see, I think that this is not, it's the way that you put it a little bit simplistic, because the fact of the matter is that you do have, there have always been demands of different types. In Mandela's time, he came out to say that he was willing to die because it was like that. It was frontline.
That was the state of the mind at the time.
It was the state. This was the situation. It was a desperate do or die situation. Now, it is camouflaged. It's still desperate, but it's camouflaged because it's spread over a wide number of things. It's based on thinking that we've moved on and all of that. But as far as I'm concerned, if you are talking about demands, you have to be able to learn what they are and try to meet them in a way, as I said, that has integrity. Without that, so what I'm saying is, for example, if you have, when we were going to school, our mom would say to us, look, you know what, I can give you half your pocket money now. You go to school, and then midterm, I'll send you a postal order. You trust her, you take the half, you look after it because she'll give it to you. It's the same situation that we have to do as people and as people. So
you're talking about trust. So we should trust the leaders.
No, I'm talking about the leaders earning that trust by doing at least some of what they say, and not saying what they cannot do. It's a very scary thing to do, because if you want to be elected and you go in and you say, look, you know what, I mean, we can't do this right now, but trust me, we'll be doing it, and then they feel that people will not vote for them.
Well, that's true, because people don't like sincere leaders these days.
Well,
because there's all sort of phantasm. There's all sort of phantasm and fantasies around that has been influenced by what is grandiose and what the human need is, influenced by films, influenced by pop culture or whatever the culture is.
No, but I think that we are underrating people. When people are working for themselves, when people are working for themselves, they will starve in order to make that dream work. How can we get that into the public sector? How can we have a situation in which people will give up something in order to get something? I'm worried about that, and I think that is why I'm saying there's something about capturing people's trust, and so if they do trust you, they will do. Do
you think that the current crop of leaders are losing it? We're talking about Ghana.
I am talking about Ghana.
Do you think that they're losing that trust? They're trying to earn it, but they're just not trying hard enough, and so the gap is widening.
No, well, I think that they have to do more to earn the trust, and I really think that it's about pulling together. They sometimes they're doing a lot of things that are all scattered around, and they don't pull it together so that people can see the impact of what they are doing. Sometimes their way of communicating what they're doing is poor. So you have a situation in which people don't see, because you are communicating at cross purposes. I mean, those kinds of things, or allowing yourself to be pulled, into things that are trivial, and not concentrating on the big picture. And I think those kinds of things, what hurts is that it's not big things that are creating the problem. It's kind of little, kind of, I don't know, parochial things.
You have been in government before,
Yeah.
so you know how the state of government and the public service or whatever works.
Yeah.
What do you think about the current state of political activity we have now, and the conscientization of the need to have a democratic dispensation that would always speak for the people, but make it more participatory?
You know what? I mean, the death of Nelson Mandela has just reminded me that when we were in school, we used to go on demonstrations because of, some big issue
You mean
that
the
has happened
university?
in the university. You'd go on a demonstration, because of Sharpeville, or you go on, you know what I mean? I mean, these days, you don't get that. The students are not interested in the big picture. When you listen to, say,
Because you don't teach them the big picture. Or
the
time is not there for them to learn about the big picture.
No. I don't think it's right, because if you can stand on the, on the football field, whatever you call it, Starber field, and pray till the next morning, you can.
It's called Christianity.
Yeah, please. I think that we'll have to talk about that on another day. But I think with the balancing of things is an issue, and I'm saying this deliberately because you see, if you can't think out beyond yourself, and you can't think about other people and your place in the world, you can't do this. You cannot run, a country. So I'm saying that our politicians, there are some things that they could do, which would capture, capture people's. They've got to convince people that they are there because of the people, and so the whole idea of doing politics that is based on transactions and
You're talking about the give and take issue.
Yeah, and about t-shirts and things and more than that and all of that.
Okay.
Or looking at it in terms of, okay, when you get in, what do you get out of it? And if you go,
let me ask you this very straight question, because we've just captured it there. And we call them slacks on the TV. Okay, President Mohammed's plea for political patience.
Yes.
Do you think he deserves any patience at all, or we need to give him that?
I do, because
Why?
For our own sake.
Whose sake?
The people of the country.
Okay.
If you don't, if we don't have the patience, it doesn't, forget about him in particular. We have to have patience with ourselves, because we're all in this together. We're all part of raping the state. We're all part of not doing our work well. So we've got to have the patience to relearn how to be, good citizens. And so, whether he says it, if it's him who said it or not, I really don't think, if you take him out of the equation and see whether, just doing that is going to help anything. We have to do, what he's saying is a truism. It's just that he's got to provide the leadership that makes it possible for us to believe in it.
Did you vote in the last election?
Of course I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not about asking you who you voted for.
No, I won't tell you anyway. So.
Okay. The front, because we're just linking that to the next war we're come to talk. Daily Graphic is quoting a Professor Latte, who says, "Stop blame game in discussing issues of national concern," because I think that also dovetails into what we're discussing this morning. And he's the vice president of the Global Leadership Network, an NGO, and Professor Samuel Latte has stressed the need for Ghanaians to eschew the growing blame game tendency in the national body politic. He said, instead of looking for loopholes and resorting to the blame game, it was important for Ghanaians to use their expertise to team up with government to initiate policies and programs that would enhance socio-economic development, blah, blah, blah. You think so?
You see, I don't, the angle is problematic for me. People in governance have to be kept on their toes. I think it's wonderful that we have a system in this country that doesn't exist in other countries, where people can say what they think, and say to government, look, they're not doing right by us, and have you looked at this, and have you looked at that, and have you looked at that? So the civil society, coming in on mining, coming in on corruption, coming in, all of these mechanisms, I think should grow. I mean, okay, so Parliament, people can abuse each other and all that, but I think it's important for people to get up and say, have you looked at this and looked at that and looked at that? So that we are building a new system that I think we should continue to build. What I think is problematic is the dishonesty of jumping onto a platform, taking something out of context and just blowing it up, and preoccupying people's minds with that sort of thing, when they could be preoccupied with looking at how things can be done, not how things cannot be done or have not been done. So this business of equalizing and saying, you did it well, we, you know,
well, the MPP does,
yeah,
and
this, and so on, and we're spending our whole time listening to that sort of thing. That
because
is
talking
not
about
productive.
what you're saying, I have this message on social network page, a Facebook page we have. It says that John News on TV page, this one from Moseb Watson, says that Professor, what do you make of the current state of media reportage and their interactions with political leaders? Are they to blame? Are they to be blamed at all?
You see, I think that the media has. I mean, I think it's improving on basically even a monthly, yearly basis. I think so. I mean, I think that people are taking themselves seriously as journalists, and they're going out there to try and be professional. I think I see that in some instances. But what I think is sad is the media trying to intercept developing situations. So, for example, if a meeting is going on and they are looking at 6 scenarios, and you come and you are pressing the people who are involved in the negotiation to tell you what those scenarios are, you put the scenario out and then people jump on them. But meanwhile, that is not the conclusion of the process. So sometimes your desire to be the first to put something out there just creates chaos in developing situations.
So you're saying that we just truncate?
It can truncate.
In terms of what the public needs to, what message the public needs to absorb. Instead of giving a full message, you tend to just truncate it somewhere and give them a half-baked message. And it just distorts the whole thing. Sometimes, especially in negotiations, some things cannot be shared. They've got to go on and debate and so on until they come to a conclusion. I think that is, for me, is problematic, because a lot of strategic thinking is something that goes on. It can change from 1 minute to the other. People who are disagreeing now, in 5 minutes, they could have found a solution. But if you come in and try to get one of them out there to come and tell you what is going on and all of that, that is problematic for me. So try as you might, sometimes when some people don't give way, or they are not allowing you to do it, then you think that they are unfriendly to the media. But I don't. Sometimes you have to put your foot down and say, I can't talk about this now. I remember I've had some interaction with you, and you told me, please wait, before in my media practice. Do you think perhaps the media is giving room and creating the platform for all these to fester, people to be blaming each other on their platforms, as a result creating some instability or polarity?
I think people love scandals and
well, generally, don't you?
And the opportunity to ridicule somebody or whatever and so on. So of course, there are times when some issues are just overstretched. They kind of they are not relevant to the core of the matter, and sometimes the public gets confused by that.
Get caught up in all this.
They get caught up. I like that. Yeah, they get caught up in it, and then you're not really, where are we going? Are we trying to solve a problem, or do we just want to make a public spectacle?
So can I pose it this way, that the media is supposed to set agenda, and so we're setting the wrong agenda for the public? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think you see, I don't like categorical statements. So I will say that sometimes you get the impression, that some people in the media, it's like, okay, I'm doing my work, you should do yours. If you don't want to talk, get out of it. But I'm going to press you as hard as I can. That kind of thing, and jumping down people's throats and so on. Some people are handle it, so it's problematic. But yes, that some of the agenda which is being set is not relevant, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Do you think, and talking about the issue of agenda, perhaps a lot more focus should be made on social issues? Perhaps if the government is not providing enough schools for a community, that should be more paramount than whatever a political person says or politician says about a perceived corruption activity in a government past or years past.
You see, let me try and give you an example. When I've often been on platforms where the children are out there, speech day or something like that, and this marvelous little thing that the children are doing, and then they are taking pictures of us sitting there watching them. Why? What is it?
Because you are news, Professor.
No. The news is the children, and the news may be one's interaction with them. But I really have a difficulty with those kinds of things. So, for example, if you say, okay, you could just go and talk about schools. No, I'm not saying that. If you do a critical analysis of the school thing, then you may want to say, look at the school and then ask, the person who was supposed to supply the books or, something, you sort of make sure that you deal with the politics of the issue, you deal with the social aspect of the issue, you deal with the human interest aspect of the issue, and you can almost any issue, if you're a good journalist, you can do that with it, so that's how I feel about that. Yeah.
Now, on the last subject of what the media can do, very soon we're going to have the parties going to a stage of electing their executives, and those executives down the ward. I'm talking about from the regional level. Then we go to what they call the wards in the constituencies. Should that always be the focus? Perhaps do you think that we're delineating what the focus should be from development?
Oh, politics is part of development. Okay, politics is part of development. At different stages in the life of a country, certain things will be happening. Some things happen once every 4 years. Obviously, if it's happening once every 4 years, it's time to go there and see what is going on. But what you take to it, the kind of questions you ask. There's a really amusing clip from a sister radio station where they actually went to the debates at the I don't know, was it a ward, whatever, debates at the very basic level, and it was amazing how people were struggling to show that they had a development orientation. They had to, in order to get elected, they had to say something about what they were going to do about their community. And then the people in the community were asking them questions. You have to be accountable. And if the media is following that process of accountability, that would be fantastic, so that you can't just get up and say that you just want to be something. The only thing is the way that the situation is corrupted, it has to be caught at the beginning. So I want to see some courage here. I want to see some courage, of media people actually being able to show us who is engaged in this corruption, and get them to backtrack. So that's the agenda I would have. But you're doing a good job in many other ways. Yeah.
There's an issue I want us to look at.
Yeah.
And I know, where do you live? Jawulu. Okay. Land guards kill one person at Aika in Doblo. I just want us to pick your thoughts on that. I know it's not part of the issue I told you we'll discuss.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenon these days. Yeah. People want to dispose of their lands, and lands have now become prime properties, etc. But the way we go about it, land guards.
I think that things have gone horribly wrong. There's a clash of cultures between the traditional way where, I'm a custodian of the land of my clan, and therefore there were accountability systems at the time. So me as an individual, I can't sell that land. And if I do, I must consult and we must come to a decision. So the loss of that thing, has caused a situation where greedy individuals within clans are just disposing of.
Is it not because of the money?
Yes, but you see, the question I'm asking is that, when you get to a situation where people are maybe this whole building was ours, and now we are just locked into this corner. So whereas, we were spread all over the building, if we are 50, we are all now here because somebody, and it's not all of us, some few people have sold the rest of the building and we no longer own it. That thinking, I think that some work has to be done to try and get clan elders and so on to try and understand what they are losing by just selling. I was told of a story, somewhere in the central region where some elder went and stood there, and he was 50 acres of front, sort of beachfront land, and somebody told me in Fanti, oh, say yeah, you understand? Yeah. Beachfront land is prime land in other countries.
Yes.
Oh, say yeah, that sort of you've got to get. There's got to be some level of education. I know I'm talking about the slow process, but that has to be done. And then I think that there has to be people who are enforcing, who enforcement agencies have to enforce. And the whole idea of making it very, very, very unprofitable to be corrupt in these kinds of things has got to be done. You've got to show people that if you're corrupt and in this kind of area, what will happen to you is something that we'd rather not do it. I mean, that's something that we need to do.
Have there been complaints to you before? This one we're moving about lands, going to issues of acquisitions, governor, you want to do trade, etc. Have you been talked to or complaints made to you that you need to pass something behind the back before you get some services in the public sector, government?
Yes.
Is that a concern for you?
Oh, it's a terrible concern, because I keep telling people that, do you want me to charge each child that, I'm teaching your children. Do I collect money from them before I teach them? Everybody needs to do their work. Everybody needs to do their work. I mean, having been in government, I realize, the kind of pressure that comes on you. I mean, I had a contractor come, to my office to try and tell me that, do I have a house? So I asked him that, why has he seen me sleeping in the street? I mean, it's like, what? Everybody is involved in this sort of vicious cycle, and it has to be broken. So when you say you won't do it, then people kind of look at you funny, and you have to have the time. You say, I will wait, and so on. You have to have the time to break the cycle, So people are not expecting you to refuse to be part of it, and we've got to create a critical mass of people who sometimes they dare to look at you and say, because if you are standing there, you see what they are doing. You know what I mean?
Because on the front page of the Ghanaian Times, we have officials buying favors, and Ghana Integrity Initiative is urgent action. Because I would want to read the story to you, Professor Sudalandade. It says Vitus Azim, who is executive director, I'm sure will be in the studio very soon talking to my colleague, has asked President John Mahama to sanction and prosecute MMDA heads and all other public officials who use state resources to buy gifts for others for favors, or they in turn also collect gifts for favors. And we're talking on this very subject. Has it always been a canker? Has been an issue, let's say, from the days of the days?
Oh yes, yes, it has. It has. I mean, we're all the way back to us, sort of exchanging human beings for beads and mirrors and what I mean. So it's been there. The problem is when we look at the opportunity cost of the effect of it on our development. In most places things have to change, not because people are good. I mean, the slave trade, for example, did not stop because the people who were stopping it were good. They realized that it wasn't helping their economy. It does not help. And we have to take critical steps, because you see, it's ironical and cynical for you to be in a position where you are in a state, I won't mention things, but I mean, if you're supposed to provide a service to a state agency, and you know that the person who is in charge of the state agency does not own the money himself. It's state money, and you still expect him to take that state money and give it to you personally before you do what you have to do. Of course, it needs to be punished. I think that it is unconscionable for that sort of thing to happen. For you to say that, for me to process this document, for you, you have to send my child to school or university.
Do you think that government, when we're not necessarily talking about only government of the day, governments need to perhaps be more stringent and be more bold in tackling this, because they are perpetuated by officials of the state, not only political appointees but also public
throughout the system. I really think that the Ghanaian thing about Enyefi it's very, very strong in this area. And so on, and we do that, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. And I really think that we have to put our foot down, but those of us who are giving must also be willing to sacrifice. So if you have to be in a queue, be in the queue. I mean, it's a matter of doing it a number of times until people find out that it's not worth it. And we have to band together. So all those who are interested in this thing should get together so that you don't feel that you are alone. And then a difference will be made. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure.
When's your birthday?
Well, my birthday was on the 5th of December. So I actually feel, I don't know whether I'm happy or sad, but Mandela died on my birthday, and I think that's just a wonderful thing in a way.
Yeah, but I think his life needs to be celebrated.
It does. It does need to be. It's wonderful. I mean, I just see his smile and the kind.
He's a great man.
Yeah.
Well, we have had in the studio Professor A.C. Sutherland Adi with the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana, and working in language, literature, and drama section. Yes. Is that where you are?
Yes.
Okay. And she served on several boards, committees, and commissions both in the university, and has been Minister of State between 1986, 92.
92.
Okay,
92,
yeah. Okay. Did they try to woo you back into government in any way? I mean, any of the parties?
Well, yeah. There's been. No. There was an attempt, and even to take on an ambassadorial post, but my mother had just died, so I decided that I would stay at home. So but I do things. I mean,
you do things on the quiet.
I try to serve on boards and things
and
help people as much as I can. Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Okay, thank you very much, Auntie AC. And speaking to us on a number of subjects. We don't get there often, and when we do, it's a pleasure. I really loved the poem that she read to us, written in the book, The Traces of a Life by Abna P. Busia. It was about a whole lot of things, but specifically that very poem on the life of the former first black president of South Africa, who just passed on, Nelson Mandela. That's it for AM Talk. Next, we go to